God is saying to you today, yesterday does not define today in my economy. Every morning I bring new mercy. Whatever yesterday held, the failures, the fear, the falling short, today begins fresh with my compassion. There is something quietly radical about how God structures his mercy. He did not design it to accumulate, to be earned, to be kept in a vault and withdrawn only by the spiritually deserving. He designed it to arrive fresh, every single morning, regardless of what the night before looked like. Not recycled grace, not yesterday's leftover compassion, a little thinner than the day before, because you use so much of it. Not rationed mercy that trembles on the edge of running out. New mercy, as full on the morning after your worst day as it was on the morning of your best. This is a promise embedded in one of the most counterintuitive texts in the entire Bible. Lamentations, a book written from the rubble of total national collapse, is where God chose to anchor this declaration. Jeremiah was not writing from a mountaintop. He was writing from ruins. And to understand the weight of what he wrote, you have to sit with where he was sitting when he wrote it. Jerusalem had fallen. The temple, the dwelling place of the living God, the beating heart of an entire civilization's identity, had been burned to the ground. The people who were supposed to be God's own treasure possession were being led away in chains to Babylon. Families were separated. Children were starving in the streets. Everything that was supposed to be permanent had been dismantled. Jeremiah watched all of it happen. He had warned them. He had wept in advance of destruction, earning him the title, the weeping prophet. And now the weeping was not prophetic. It was raw. It was grief without a silver lining, lamentation without easy resolution. And this is where he writes, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning." Notice the structure of that passage. Jeremiah does not begin with the mercy. He begins with the affliction. He begins with the bitterness, the wandering, the soul cast down to the ground. He does not airbrush reality to make his theology more presentable. He holds both things at once. The devastation is real and the mercy is real. The grief is not performed, and neither is the hope. This is important for us to receive honestly. The promise of new mercy is not a promise that pain disappears. It is not a spiritual anesthetic. It is a declaration that no matter what the landscape looks like, even when it looks like burned down Jerusalem, the compassions of God are still arriving fresh, still present, still inexhaustible. The English word compassion is already rich, but the Hebrew word behind it in this passage goes even deeper. The word is rakamim, and it is directly related to the word rekhem, which means womb. This is not abstract benevolence. This is not God extending a corporate policy of goodwill from a safe administrative distance. The compassion described here is a gut level, visceral, almost physical love that a mother has for the child she carried in her body. It is tender. It is instinctive. It is a kind of love that does not require an argument or a demonstration of worthiness. It simply is because the relationship is. God returns to this image repeatedly throughout Scripture. In Isaiah, when the people of Israel feel utterly forsaken, God asks, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you." The love of God for his people exceeds even the most powerful human bond, and that bond is the one he uses as his comparison point. When you wake up tomorrow morning, or when you wake up later today, that is the quality of mercy that is waiting for you. Not cold, not clinical, not a transaction. Warm, present, deeply personal. Arriving like light through a window. You did not earn the sunrise, but here it is anyway. There's a rhythm God has built into creation that mirrors something true about his character. Every morning the sun rises. Every morning the world is offered another beginning. Not because yesterday's darkness never happened. It did. But because the nature of morning is to be a fresh start regardless. When Jeremiah says that God's mercies are new every morning, he is not using new as a casual word. He means genuinely, substantively, completely new. Not refurbished, not a second edition of yesterday's grace with a few adjustments, not mercy that has been sitting in a stockroom since last Tuesday, new, just for today, arriving with this morning's light. This means something important. You do not carry yesterday's ration of mercy into today. If you stumbled badly yesterday, if you were unkind, if you broke a promise to yourself, if you failed at something you had committed to, if you sat in despair and could not find your way to even try, you do not enter today with a depleted account. You did not use up more than your share. You are not behind. You did not exhaust the supply. This morning, the mercy is full again. This morning, the compassion is fresh. Not because you have gotten your act together, not because you made a resolution or prayed the right prayer or mustered enough sincerity, but because that is the nature of who God is. He gives fresh mercy not as a reward for improvement. He gives it as an expression of his character. The Psalms echo this pattern across generations. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. Night may hold weeping, and real weeping, honest lamentation, grief that does not pretend, but morning holds something different. Not the erasure of the weeping, but the arrival of something else alongside it. The rejoicing, the mercy, the fresh beginning. If you are tired, this next part is for you specifically. Some of us carry our yesterdays for far longer than God intends. We drag our failures behind us like weights we have convinced ourselves we deserve to carry. We rehearse old mistakes in the quiet moments. We wake up in the morning already under the shadow of what happened last week, last year, a decade ago. We have internalized a kind of spiritual accounting system in which our wrongdoing accrues interest and our mercy account dwindles with each withdrawal. God does not operate with that accounting system. His economy is radically different. Consider the prodigal son, a story Jesus told to illustrate exactly this kind of grace. A young man who takes his inheritance early, essentially telling his father he wishes he were dead, wastes everything, ends up in a field feeding pigs and longing to eat what the pigs are eating. He has squandered not just money but dignity, relationship, and years. He rehearses a little speech on his way home, the kind of speech we make when we have decided we no longer deserve to be called a son, only a servant. But before he can deliver the speech, his father sees him while he was still a great way off and runs to him. Not walks, runs. The father who has every human right to be cold, to require a demonstration of change, to make the son earn his way back, instead throws a robe on his shoulders and a ring on his finger and throws a party. This is a character of God. This is a God who designed mercy to be new every morning. He is not waiting with a ledger. He is waiting with a robe. Whatever you have been carrying, whatever old failure you rehearse, whatever shame you wear like a second skin, this morning is an invitation to lay it down, not because it doesn't matter, but because it has already been addressed. Yesterday does not define today in God's economy. You are not the sum of your worst moments. You are the child of a father whose compassions never fail. Great is your faithfulness. It is one of the most beloved declarations in Christian history. But those words did not begin as a hymn. They began as a conclusion, a theological statement drawn from evidence in the most devastating circumstances imaginable. Jeremiah did not write, "I hope your faithfulness is great." He wrote, "Great is your faithfulness." Present tense, declarative, settled. He had tested the faithfulness of God under enormous pressure. He had seen a hole when everything around it was crumbling. And from that vantage point, he made a declaration that has echoed through centuries. The faithfulness of God is great. Faithfulness, in the biblical sense, is not merely reliability. It is covenant loyalty, the kind that holds even when the other party has broken the agreement. God's faithfulness to his people in Lamentations is remarkable precisely because his people had so thoroughly failed to be faithful in return. The judgment they were experiencing was, in part, the consequence of their own unfaithfulness. And yet his faithfulness is described as great, undiminished by their failure, still intact, still arriving in the form of new mercy every morning. This is the foundation of everything. If God's faithfulness were contingent on our faithfulness, we would all be in serious trouble. None of us has a record clean enough to command God's ongoing commitment. But his faithfulness is not contingent on ours. It flows from his own character, from who he is, and therefore does not fluctuate with our performance. Scripture says it plainly. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. God cannot be faithless. It is not a possibility in his nature, and so the mercy keeps coming. And so it arrives fresh every morning. And so it is great, not trembling, not diminished, not wearing thin after all these centuries of human failure. Great. There is something deeply intentional about the rhythm of morning and night that God has built into creation. Morning is not just a neutral time marker on a clock. It is a theological statement built into the structure of each day. In Genesis, when God is creating the world, the day is described as beginning in evening and ending in morning. And there was evening and there was morning. This is rooted in the Hebrew understanding of time. Each day begins in darkness and moves toward light. Every day begins in night and arrives at morning. There's a directionality built into time itself. From darkness toward dawn. Think about what happens every morning in the natural world. The darkness that felt total at 3 a.m. is gone. Not gradually overcoming some long, hard struggle. Gone completely. As the sun comes up, the light does not have to fight the darkness away. It simply arrives and darkness yields, because that is what darkness does in the presence of light. The darkness of yesterday, the guilt, the grief, the weight of what went wrong, does not have to be overcome through some enormous spiritual effort on your part. The mercy simply arrives like morning, and in its presence, yesterday's darkness yields. This is where theology must become practice. The mercy that arrives fresh every morning is not something to simply observe from a distance. It is something to receive, and receiving is itself an active thing. Before you can receive today's mercy, it helps to be honest about yesterday. Not brutal, not obsessive, but honest. What actually happened? Where did you fall short? What do you need to bring before God this morning? There is a reason confession is a practice in the Christian life. Not because God doesn't already know, but because naming something honestly before God is how we stop pretending. And pretending is the enemy of receiving. Many of us unconsciously carry an internal ledger, a running tally of our failures, our debts, our inadequacies. Today is an invitation to release it, not because the failures on the ledger aren't real, but because Christ has already addressed the ledger. The cross is not a suggestion that maybe God might be willing to overlook some things. It is the full payment of the debt. The ledger has been dealt with. You are not required to carry it.